It's the Zach Martin Show on New HD TV. We're with Diana Studenberg, who is the lead singer of Trope. We have the new video in which you covered Tears for Fears. As soon as I heard it, I added it to New HD LA, as well as New HD here in New York. So you're being played in rotation. I think it's a fabulous
Thank
rendition,
you.
interpretation of that. And I just want to compliment you because you did something that I think is really important for all artists. When you find out that there's an opportunity to hear your song played, you reach out to the people that will most likely play it or at least make them aware of it. So thank you for doing that. I really appreciate you reaching out.
Thank you for picking up the ball and supporting and playing the song. So
Very, very happy to do it. So tell us a little bit about Trope, a little about your history, how you came up with the name Trope, the meaning of Trope.
yeah, so Trope started when I met guitar player producer Moonhead, and we started writing together on actually a solo record that wasn't this style of progressive music. And then he showed me these other things that he'd been working on, and just asked me what I thought about it. And I actually liked it way more than what I was presenting to him. So we ended up diverting paths off a solo record and working on this kind of more progressive style of music. And yeah, and so then that just developed. We were in the writing process for a little while, and we eventually started adding members and moved to Los Angeles and played a bunch of shows there, at some really awesome venues like the Viper Room and the Whiskey. And we had the opportunity to open for some comedians as well that we really admired at the Hollywood Improv. And so we've just played a bunch of shows and played some festivals, Summerfest, and then yeah, ended up releasing a few singles, and then we'll be releasing the full album in March, and that's our first album.
Well, that's good. Now,
Yeah.
you mentioned some great places to go gig at in LA, Whiskey a Go Go, the Viper, and all those places, and playing with the comedians. That's a lot of fun. Where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Canada.
I kind
Yeah.
of figured that. I didn't want to use my unconscious bias to say that you must be Canadian, by your accent. What part of Canada?
I'm actually from Montreal.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you speak French?
I do. I speak a number of languages, actually. That's why I'm always surprised when I hear that I have a Canadian accent, because I don't know, because of the other languages, but I guess it's just
I hear a little bit of Celine Dion,
um
that's all right. No, I think that Canada is a very interesting place in that there's so much going on that people really have no idea what's going on in the great north areas of the North America. In Canada specifically, especially being bilingual, and the French thing is not exactly French as we know it.
yeah.
Quebec has a little
It's
bit different twist on the language, right?
yeah, it's very
Kind of
much
interesting.
it's definitely different. And I'm curious, what do you mean by like different things happening? Like
Well,
in Canada.
the Quebec and the how you use your French and how the prime minister has to speak French as well as English, but
Yeah.
it's got to be a specific type of French. And then musically, the radio is a little bit different with how they support the artist, and there's different little rules that I've heard about over the years where you can only play 30% outside of Canada. Just
Oh,
things to their own. And then you got Molson, so that's good.
yeah.
Right.
Different beers. Yeah.
So growing up in Canada, obviously Montreal, you're not too far from the United States. That means that you could hear some of the American radio stations, I would imagine. What were some of the bands that really influenced you at a young age?
Well, I actually was so inspired by so many different types of music. Growing up, I liked like the pop music of the time, so Spice Girls and Backstreet Boys and all that kind of stuff. But then my brother, who was a little bit older than me, his friends would introduce him to all these like alt '90s rock type of music, so Garbage, Nine Inch Nails, Marilyn Manson. And then I started really getting into that style of music, and that's the sort of music that really inspired me to want to actually do music. And but I really liked everything. I mean, from even Lauryn Hill, and I had a Tony Braxton record on repeat growing up. And then when I was in my teens, I got into metal via influence of certain friends, and then ended up joining some metal bands. So and then Tool came into the picture, where I started hearing their music, and Dream Theater, and some of these more progressive bands. So it always just felt like there was a plethora of so many different genres coming out. And even my parents, who, my mother's Spanish Moroccan, so she would listen to all this like Spanish music, and then my dad listened to like Julio Iglesias and some older like Rolling Stones. And so it was just like such a weird mixture of eclectic, different sounds coming from everywhere. And it really felt like that, because when I grew up, it felt like music was such an important part of our dialogue for how we identified ourselves in a way, or at least the groups that I found myself hanging out in. People found that their voice via what kind of bands they were listening to at the time. So
Mm.
yeah, it was kind of an onslaught, which was really inspiring.
I don't know if you've ever seen the meme on Facebook, but don't judge a person by, I don't know, the color of his skin. You judge them by their record collection or something to that effect.
I didn't see
It's
that, but it doesn't
uh,
surprise me. Yeah.
it's funny when I'm thinking, yeah, yeah, yeah. Judge them by their record collection. I like your use of the word plethora. That's shows me high intelligence. I would say that you're the type of person who really understands what it means to have a cornucopia of fun. So that's a plus.
It's a good word too.
You're adventurous, obviously. That's my read on you. You try to do things in your own way, in your own style, and you don't let anybody impede your progress. Did I nail it?
That's the goal. You nailed like the epitome of what we reach to strive for. So
Right.
yes.
So what has been your biggest frustration in the music business for you personally?
Oof. I don't know if there's one word that can encompass that, but I mean, I think depending on, so there's different aspects of it. Like, do you mean just like the industry per se, or the creative process, or kind of
Well,
anything and everything?
let's get to the creative process a little bit down the road. I'm thinking about the industry itself because I don't know what point, maybe because I'm the father of a wonderful daughter who is also an aspiring disc jockey and has her own,
Nice.
way about her. I kind of become the default dad or father of many of the female artists because I don't think that they get treated fairly. I don't think they get treated equally. I don't think that uh, they are viewed the way they should be viewed. It's more objective, and I don't like the objectifying of individuals. That
Yeah.
judgment. I don't want to bring a lot of the nastiness in it. I mean, everybody understands where I'm getting at. I just don't appreciate it. I don't like it, and I feel that while women struggle to uh, get the rights that they should be born with, to get your rightful place. I don't think it should be that much of a struggle. At the same time, I don't think it's always the woman's job to make sure that the woman gets treated like she should, like an equal. There's got to be some of us guys that stand up and say something too, right?
Yeah.
It's got
Yeah.
to be a group effort. So I don't know if I'm at a place by doing that, but I've always felt this fatherly like approach. That's why I'm a big advocate of many of the female artists.
I mean, that's extremely appreciated, first of all. So I really don't think that's out of place, because if you're coming from a place of wanting to demonstrate equality. I mean, I was tuning into a seminar with some of the heads of, it was a women in music, a women in film actually conference, where they actually brought like heads of some of the music labels, like I think Warner and some kind of the big guns. And they were saying that even in today's kind of market, women in the rock genre are so underrepresented. And I feel that way, even taking it a step further into the progressive rock genre. It's just yeah. And I mean, back to what you were saying. I mean, as far as like the being treated inappropriately, I mean, there's always situations. I mean, one of the labels, sorry, I tend to hop around a bit quick, but one of
No,
the
that's
labels
okay.
that we reached out to had actually gotten back, and we sent them the shout video. That is one of our more sort of straight up songs. It's not a progressive song per se on the album. So we sent them the snippet of the video, and their response was, "Why isn't the singer showing more skin? Why isn't she dressed? Why is she dressed that way?" And
Well, why don't you give me his address and I'll go up and talk about that.
exactly, yeah. And that was just such a that actually that actually did surprise me because the our music is so not about that at all. Like you can tell that it is a band. I mean, there's a lot of musicianship, musicality that goes into the parts and everything and crafting. So that kind of surprised me. But I mean, I don't know. Luckily, in a way, I've been fortunate to have some extremely supportive men in my life. On the flip side of like always on the one side of definitely encountering some men that were objectifying and frankly just couldn't be trusted,
Yeah,
and
no, no.
and I think that to me in the industry is something that I've taken away, as far as, which is unfortunate, that that's a takeaway, but you definitely really I mean, not everyone has that same empathetic view or values the humanity first and foremost in the person that they're speaking to. There's always there's not always, but there's often just that means to an end view of a human that's in front of you. So like I'm not used to that, so that took me a while to kind of digest and understand and be present to, rather than just throw a rose tinted glass over and expect some form of kindness. So that's just a lesson. I think that's like that in business in general, unfortunately. But I hope that kind of
No, it did.
philosophy. Yeah.
It did. It's unfortunate that when I heard the song, I knew there was something there immediately. I was like, "Wow, this is really good. I like this." And you picked a
Thanks.
song that was, I wouldn't expect anybody to cover that. I mean, it was, really intuitive on your part when you go pick something. And a lot of great bands, just so you know, got their start by doing just that. Led Zeppelin, their first album is pretty much a cover album, with the exception of a few songs, maybe. I don't even remember that far back. But I think that
Well, they kind of covered in different ways other
they
songs too.
you know what? You see, you got it. You understood that because you took the time to probably research, discover, and ask questions, which are all good things. And that's what makes a person, I think, in many levels. If you want to give someone an A+ for doing that, I give you an A+ for doing that, because that's really a good idea, to
Thanks.
study your craft, to find out the history, to learn those little things, to get the takeaways. Um, Other vocalists that you might admire, that they have a way of interpretation that is just special, at which makes them who they are. Some of my favorites, I'll give you. I've recently discovered, and I don't know what took me so long. Joss Stone,
Okay, yeah. I've heard of her.
Jossstone.
Yeah.
We play her on New HDLA. She's not really a rock artist, but it's a great song. So I'm like, I'm playing it. I don't like
Nice.
the old rules that these radio guys. I don't know who they were or where they came from, but I don't want to play by their rules. I like Whitney Ty.
I
She's
know Whitney. I'm friends with Whitney.
yeah, she's a great girl.
That's how I found out
Um,
about you actually.
yeah, she's totally awesome. I the older rockers, I always like Chrissy Hynde to the Pretenders. Now I'm going to tell you right now, if anybody treated her like they treated you in regard to your video that you sent, I think that they might end up coming out of the conversation with a black eye. you know, she'd give them a good one. I don't know.
If I if I
She's just a cool chick.
yeah,
Yeah.
she's rock.
Um
A
and
lot of these things happen by email nowadays, so you don't have the eye to like
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, well, the context is usually lost 9 times out of 10. What Here's a different question. Um do you think that sometimes people misunderstand you as a person, or they don't understand who Diana is, or they get you wrong, maybe because of social media, or maybe because of your style?
You know what's funny is that I was actually having this thought in more of a global sense the other day because I feel like I feel like we all misunderstand each other, and, like, to a certain extent, I don't wanna generalize, but I have to at a certain point, so bear with me for a second. But, I feel like, because to understand someone means to see them, you know, and I don't think that that's something that's especially with our lens reversed kind of world that we're in right now with these phones and socials and everything, which even regardless if you're selling something or not, it has definitely turned the mirror. Like, I mean, the mirror was facing you, but it's definitely put a mirror for us all where we're more self-focused than before and we're seeing each other even less, you know? So
Mm,
while, yeah, I definitely do often feel misunderstood, but it's also kind of my job, I feel, to communicate who I am, and more importantly, via the music. I think there's always going to be different levels and layers to people that we can't access or that might be hard to communicate, you know, and maybe not necessary to communicate in a way. It's just because there's like a slippery slope where it gets self-indulgent, where it's like like you must know
yeah,
all about me. But yeah, I definitely do. I mean, I feel like I kind of have two polarities where I'm like super hyper emotional and a little bit analytical. So those things are
mm.
kind of constantly at war with each other. So that can definitely create some misunderstanding or yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can sort of relate to that in many ways, so many different levels. I've gotten to the point where, I guess maybe as you get older, you really don't care as much what people think about you, and as far as what anybody thinks about my looks, again, I don't really care. It doesn't matter to me. I'm on the radio anyway, so I have to paint pictures with words, and you know,
That's the best kind.
it's not so much what other people think about me, it's what I think about myself. You have to do that self-inventory. Um, so it's
Maybe
just a
there's
little
the rub.
yeah, and this is where that, I guess where we tap into that art of who we are. Now, you're where do you draw it? You know, I don't know if it's an easy answer, but let's just say there's a young person, you know, they're thinking about getting into music, whatever genre. They could be a boy, it could be a girl, 10 years old. Let's pretend like we're talking to a 10-year-old, the little you, the little Diana. And you could use some good tips to get started on that journey.
Yeah.
What do you do to write your music? Where do you draw the inspiration? What do you do when you have a writer's block?
Uh, what I love about songwriting is equally what I find kind of scary about it. So sometimes like you'll be writing something and I find this with lyrics sometimes is that I'll be writing something and I'll have a kind of a vague idea of what it's about, and it feels like you're going on this dark path where you don't know where the steps are and you can't actually see the path and it's all dark, so you don't know where you're walking either. And that's how it feels during the creative process where you're just stumbling around and trying to explore and find out what it means. And then I was just doing this with a song like this past week that I was writing, and then the next day I had an argument with my partner, and then I sat down in the chair, and I'm like, I know what this is about, you know. So sometimes emotional events will just trigger you into a sort of not necessarily certainty, but into a zone or a mode where you'll see things differently, and all of a sudden you'll latch onto an idea that you can commit to. So I think to answer your question, where do I get inspiration from? I really think it's from anything and everything. Uh, like I recently wrote a song about the concept of regret and how we work through it, and how we don't have to be kind of slaves to that particular emotion, which is so closely tied to shame. And I spoke to someone about how like I was just hearing someone say how they feel when they're going through that anxiety of regret, and they mentioned a line that said like their skin feels like it's literally crawling. And so I pulled that lyric and into that those words into a lyric, and I just kind of pull from all directions, whether it's just something that I'm consternating over or a feeling or an experience that's triggering me wildly that I just need to put down on paper, or just something that someone else went through that I'm close to that I really feel I'm like just really feel strongly about, you know. So I kind of just pull from life and even from books sometimes when I'm reading something. I'll copy some like words that I find very powerful or concepts, you know. So it kind of really does come from everywhere. Whatever triggers like an emotion, you know, in me.
I was just about to ask because I'm listening to your vocabulary, which I think is really very good. It's the
Thanks.
best way I could put it. Um, what kind of books do you read? Because obviously you really are absorbing some of that literature that you're taking in.
I think I was very fortunate, from a young age. I always felt like I wanted to escape my environment. Like, I always had this feeling of I wanted to run away all the time. And so I've physically tried to, but it didn't work because at 9 years old, you kind of need to, like, you need like, find food and stuff like that. But I ended up turning to books and poetry, and so I was reading a lot of different things from a young age, oddly. Like, I was into Shakespeare, I would read a lot of Dostoevsky. I even, like, veered off a beaten path, venturing to Ayn Rand, and then veered back away from that, even though I liked some of her ideas. But I just kind of try to read as much as possible of, Charles Dickens and, Emily Bronte, and just a bunch of different writers as much as I could. Yeah.
Well, that's a good tip for somebody listening or viewing. If you're going to school and you're in grade school, oh gosh, I remember having to do a whole literature class on Shakespeare in college, and it really was a grind to get through because it's the old English and trying to understand the phraseology, if you want to call it that, and maybe you couldn't really relate to it other than maybe perhaps the historical aspect of it, which excited me. But
Cool.
having said that, it is really worth to just keep going, even when you get kind of bored, just to finish it to see where it goes. So that's a good thing. If you're in school right now and you're kind of bored with all the literature, it will pay off. I also suggest that we all spend a little bit more time with math because math is very important to,
No,
yes,
no, no,
math
no.
assignments, arithmetic.
I did a degree in engineering, which was so much math, and I'm like,
Okay. I just see, I don't know
no.
what it is. I don't know what it is about me. I have a PhD in theology and 2 master's degrees, right?
Oh wow,
I aced the national
congratulations.
chemistry test. Thanks. I don't really use it. Huh. I aced the national chemistry test. Now, my brother has a PhD in chemistry, and he's still mad at me to this day because I was able to get 100 on that test. It's like almost impossible to do. And then I have these equations in my mind sometimes, and it hurts my brain. You ever like have your brain hurt where you can't sleep because those thoughts are racing through and it just doesn't want to slow down? It actually hurts your brain.
Oh
Does that
yeah,
make sense?
yeah. I couldn't
Yeah.
sleep last night because I was just like, it was just kept going.
Right. So this is, I could see a little bit of you in myself, maybe vice versa, because when I was your age, I knew that I didn't want to grow up and die in that town that I was raised in. I thought, I got to get the hell out of this place. This is not for me. And
Word.
I didn't have too many friends. I was kind of kept to myself. I did go to church a lot with my grandma, you know. Oh, one of my favorite things that she ever did was she went up to Montreal and she went to Notre Dame and she brought me this book about Brother Andre. And that I read from cover to cover. I thought he was the coolest dude. And she tells me, do you know they took his heart and they have it on display in the cathedral? I'm like, it's a little weird, Grandma,
That's
but
kind of
okay.
dark.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's like the lives of the saints. So
Yeah.
this Brother Andre dude, just reading the book about him and how he just lived simply, and he would, I can remember him stories walking up the hill, just like walking everywhere, and the dirt. You can almost smell Montreal by how it was written, and it really made an impression on me. But you know, besides those influences, I thought, you know, you're gonna have to you're gonna have to educate yourself to get the hell out of here. It's the only way. And then I don't know how I ended up. Well, I guess
You
it was
really
more.
did that a lot.
Yeah, I did that a lot. And I don't know how I ended up doing what I do, but I'm doing it. And all I can tell you, it's so worth all the pain and frustration and the suffering to finally make it because it makes you a stronger person in the end. And then you go back and you appreciate where you came from even more because you made it out of there. So that was for
Mhm.
me. I don't know if that's kind of like the same experience you were having.
Hugely, yeah. I mean, I definitely felt at one point, that I was turning in circles in Montreal. I mean, Montreal is a funny place because when you grow up, it's like it's amazing and it was there was a lot of nightlife and kind of a lot of personality in the city and stuff like that. But it definitely has a stagnation element, like a really deep rooted stagnation element about it in many different ways and all the different um, sorry, I'm missing a word, which is probably a good word to be not remembering, but um, yeah. I definitely felt like I was turning in circles and like I needed to kind of get out of there.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean and the reason why we bring this up because there's always that one person listening, they just don't feel like they fit in, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes you don't want
Mhm.
to fit in with those other ones because they're not going anywhere, right? It doesn't always pay off to be popular. Now let's go over to the cover of Tears for Fears. Again, brilliant. What made you decide out of all the groups to cover Tears for Fears and that iconic song Shout, which I have on vinyl, by the way?
Actually, Moonhead decided on that cover because he had all the stems because he was doing some remix of stuff for Nine Inch Nails, Chris Frenna's um, music, and so he happened to have the actual stems of that song, and we were listening to it, and at first we didn't know if it was going to be a trope song at all. But then the way he was approaching it, as time went on with like all the organic instruments and the kind of guitar lines, and like he wrote all the arrangement of that entire song, and so it ended up really actually fitting, even though it's a little less, like I said, progressive than the rest of the record. It really fit with the trope sound. So it came from him, and then I loved Tears for Fears as a kid, and I knew some of their songs growing up. And when I started singing that song, it just started taking. When we were set to covering it, it started taking on all these different meanings as we were workshopping the melody too to kind of fit with my vocal range. So yeah, it was.
We're going to play it in just a few seconds here. As you worked on the song and as you recorded it and you did the video, what was the meaning of the song to you? What did it mean? What were the guys in Tears for Fears trying to convey in that song?
I think what they were conveying, which I actually wasn't fully aware of, and that's the brilliance of Tears for Fears, because you can read their lyrics and it could mean so many different things to so many different people, and it still holds up, even especially to today. And that's kind of partially like part and parcel with the timing when we decided to release it, because to me, part of I mean, it goes through, I think, many different meanings to me, but part of it is like we don't have to accept the status quo. It's okay to not be okay with what's going on, and to raise your voice about it. And there's a line that I love that's those one track minds that took you for a working boy, kiss them goodbye, you shouldn't have to jump for joy. And this kind of plays into what you were saying about wanting to get out and not necessarily fit in. It's like, you know when you're following, let's say, the beaten path, the towards like going off the trail, sometimes you encounter people and we have a tendency of like downplaying each other, and under rating each other, and it's like, that took you for a working boy, kiss them goodbye, you shouldn't have to jump for joy, you shouldn't have to laugh and put on a smile just because you're given certain like opportunities, or you put yourself in certain positions or whatever that aren't actually suitable for you. I don't know. Yeah, but I don't. I think that. Sorry, I'm having a bit of a brain mishmash right now, but.
That's okay. You said everything you needed to say. So without further ado, which means au revoir, I don't know what they say adieu, and then you go to it. But here we go.
In violent times, you shouldn't have to sell your soul. In black and white, they really ought to know. things I can do without. Come on, I'm talking to you. Come on, they gave you life, and in return you gave them hell, as cold as ice. I hope we live to tell the tale. I hope we live to tell the tale. Let it all out. These are the things I can do without. Come on, I'm talking to you. Come on, shout. I'm talking to you. Shout. I'm talking to you. Shout. I'm talking to you. Come on. Shout. I'm talking to you. Shout. I'm talking to you. Shout. I'm talking